everyone, and welcome to this week's WP Product Talk. I'm Katie Keith, CEO and co-founder at Barn2 Plugins. We sell 20 now WooCommerce and WordPress plugins, and I like helping people to learn more about building a successful product business while learning more from other people at the same time. And our special guest today is Mark Westguard. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me on.
That's brilliant. We're really pleased to have you. And we've got a really interesting discussion for today about building a successful product in a highly competitive market. And so I'd love to learn more about that. But first of all, can you introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. I'm Mark Westguard, founder of WS Form. I've been in the web game for 27 years. So I'm an old veteran, back from the days where we had to teach people what the internet was. Completely different market now for sure. And I've been running WS Form for about 4 or 5 years and have been in the WordPress game for about 10 years. So not as long as some people. So I'm pretty new to the arena.
Excellent. And of course, you have a form plugin which fits very well into today's topic, which is called the power of differentiation, building a successful WP product in a crowded market. And I think we can all agree that forms are a crowded market. And so let's first talk about why is this such an important issue? So I think this is an important issue because in a crowded market, generally you can assume that it's a big market as well, because that's why so many people are targeting it. So the rewards are there, but also it's very challenging. How do you compete with the big players? So why do you think it's such an important topic, Mark?
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of people trying to get into the WordPress space and getting into building plugins, which is great. You've got a huge audience there, huge potential audience. I think it's an important topic because it is a challenging market still to get your voice out there and to be known. If you build a plugin to get your voice out there and to be a known product is a long and arduous process in some cases if you're completely fresh into it. So yeah, I'm happy to be talking about that today.
Yeah, and for everybody who's listening, please do leave your comments and questions, and we'd love to answer them live. So you can comment on the WP Product Talk hashtag on Twitter, or you can comment on wherever you're watching this, such as YouTube, and we'll be able to see that and reply. So with the crowded marketplace issue, I think it's particularly important because WordPress has become so much bigger and much more professionalized. We're seeing bigger players, aren't we, Mark? So tell me, how do you compete with those, and why did you decide to in the first place?
Yeah, let's talk about why on earth did I decide to build a WordPress form plugin. So I've had an agency of sorts for my entire web career, and one of my staff members came up to me about 10 years ago and said, hey, let's try this WordPress thing out. He went to a WordCamp, came back with a lot of positive things. We started using it as a product. I had been previously in the licensing game myself. So I was licensing software in the bridal industry, funnily enough. I was licensing wedding planning and wedding website software to people like Condé Nast, who do Brides Magazine in the US, also national magazines in the UK with BBC. And had wanted to get back into licensing just because I liked the model. I liked the fact that you had recurring revenue coming through. Also, in my industry, the type of websites I was building was kind of dwindling down. We were doing a lot of small business sites. It was becoming more and more of a challenge with the likes of Wix and Squarespace, and even WordPress was making things more of a challenge because WordPress makes building a website very easy. So wanted to kind of change course a little bit and spoke to my team and said, let's build a plugin. What do you like in the WordPress industry that we could target and we can make better? And the topic of forms came up. Now, as you know, the form market in WordPress is very, very well established. There's a lot of great products out there, all of which I've got a great deal of respect for. But we saw a small niche where we weren't happy with maybe the responsiveness of forms, styling of forms, the number of plugins you had to install to get a form to do what you wanted to do, and we thought that's something that we could tackle. Stupidly thought it would take a few months to build, and here we are 4 years later, still working on it. And what I've learned is that building a form plugin, and building any plugin in WordPress, is very different from running any other business stuff I've run. It's to be like a business. You still make sure all your T's are crossed and you're. But I've learned a lot about the most effective ways of marketing plugins within this space. It's like you say, it's crowded, but there's no kind of single channel you can go to and say, hey, here's my plugin, go ahead and buy it. There's a lot of fragmented distributed channels out there. So,
Oh, I think you're breaking up there. Can you check it's all connected right? It's kind of distorted, both the picture and the sound. Well, hopefully Mark will be back in a minute. Oh, you look very clear.
oh, we're back.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. It looks like I had an internet problem.
Okay. Well, it seems to be working now. So can you repeat the last maybe 30 seconds of what you said? Because that was when you started cutting out.
Yeah, so I was just talking about the reason I chose WS Form was basically an internal decision. We just wanted to look at better ways that we could do certain things with forms. Our niche is really kind of enterprise level forms, developers, agencies, and we wanted to just improve the ability to style forms, to make fully responsive forms, make integrations easier, etc., etc. And those are the things that we focused on. And I think you've got to have that niche. You've got to find something that you can do better to differentiate your product from others. And I think that's why we've had a great deal of success.
That's interesting. So you've identified the gaps even in a crowded market, both with the functionality and also the extent to which the existing solutions appealed to your target group, which in your case was more developers and professional users rather than the website owner.
Yeah, and I think that if you're thinking about developing a plugin, whether it be a small plugin or a large plugin, you want to make sure that there's a market for it, that there's an opening there. And I don't think you necessarily need to build the next big thing. You're not looking to build the next Facebook. There's plenty of existing plugin functionality out there that can be done better. Or maybe you can find a way of doing it better, maybe improving the user interface, or there's so much opportunity out there, and you don't necessarily need to compete directly with these other companies and try to grab their customers. There's so many new people coming to WordPress every day that are looking for these products, and that's why it's important on the marketing side to be present and out there for when people are looking for these products.
That's a nice way to look at it as well. It's not so much competing as targeting different niches within that sector. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
So,
so much new business to be had out there for sure. I
mm,
mean, WordPress is growing all the time. You know, we hear these figures of X percentage power in the web and things like that, but there's a lot of new faces coming in,
mm,
and I find that when I do a WordCamp, if I'm at a WordCamp and I'm meeting people that are interested in the product, some people have been doing it for years and they may be looking for a different way of doing things. But there's also a lot of people that are, hey, I'm new to WordPress. I'm looking at different form plugins that are out there. Tell me what's different about yours. And we're not everybody's flavor. There's things that other companies maybe do better. Maybe if you just want a basic contact us form, there's lots of solutions out there for that. We can do that and more. So we just have a certain niche that we work with, and I think that's worked well for us. And recognizing that and focusing on that has made it effective.
so have you had any kind of funding, or are you a bootstrapped company?
Bootstrap company. Very fortunate to have had my previous business, so
Mm,
that I carried on basically building websites in the background, and then used the funds from that to develop WS Form. So it's been, had I gone and got investment, it would have been a lot of money, because I've had developers, my time, for, I mean, effectively 4 years now,
mm,
of pretty much solid development. It's not a small plugin by any means. There are some very small plugins out there that do great things, but form plugins have got to do all kinds of things and be able to talk to all kinds of different things as well.
mm.
So it's been quite a coding challenge, but I think that's what's kept me interested, because I love doing that kind of thing.
Brilliant. I love your story, largely because it's the opposite of mine.
Right.
So the agency stuff is similar. We were building client websites when we started selling plugins, but we had totally different ambitions. We just built the smallest plugin that we could find
Yep.
that did something
Yep.
really specific. It
Yep.
didn't take that long to build. It was WooCommerce protected categories. It just lets you
Right.
hide categories
Perfect.
in your store.
Hmm.
And there was no plugin on the market that did that at the
Yep.
time. This is back in 2016 when
Hmm.
there were more gaps. And we launched it. I blogged about it. We got straight to the top of Google because nobody was doing that. And that's how we got sales.
You're so lucky.
But how did you get sales? You've talked about the product being better, but how did
Yeah.
anybody ever discover it?
Um, Good question. No, it was, we tried everything. So we did, I came from a agency that did a lot of marketing. So we did a lot of Google AdWords, Facebook marketing, all that kind of stuff. We tried a bit of that, and that didn't really work very well for us. What we found was that if we could get other people talking about the product and we had word of mouth recommendation, that was our most powerful tool. So, word of mouth sales you can't beat. And really, it's been about being part of the WordPress community. That's really where we focus. So doing WordCamps, doing podcasts, doing things like this, where we just talk to people about what we're doing. There's so many small things that we've had to do to get to where we are. I was talking to somebody earlier on today, and they were talking to me about, is putting your product on a list for Black Friday effective? And my feedback was, well, if I hadn't have done WordCamps, if I hadn't have spoken at things, if I hadn't have done these podcasts, I'll be nowhere near where I am today. So it's about doing lots and lots of little things. And if you can get brand advocates behind you, that's an incredibly powerful thing. And by brand advocates, what I mean is somebody that is actually using the product themselves and then goes out there and talks about it, or maybe reviews it. So if I can get a review off the cuff that I haven't prompted from somebody that's used the product, when that happens, that's an incredible boost for the brand. And that's rewarding as well. You put all that hard work into building that product, and to have somebody actually write a positive review and talk about it, maybe do a video about it, that's incredibly powerful. So I would say to anybody that's looking to build a plugin, be careful where you put your marketing dollars, because there's a tendency to go straight to like Google AdWords, for example, and you can spend a fortune and just not get anywhere with it. It can be effective for some people, for sure. But for me, I'm in a very, very crowded market. So for me to compete with some of those other companies that are doing Google AdWords, it's very expensive. So the word of mouth community, brand advocate side of things has been my most powerful advocate. It's been the way that I've got the word out there. How I got that first sale, I'm not entirely sure, but I remember when it came through, it was probably because we have a light edition in the plugin directory. Somebody would have installed that and wanted to upgrade and get some more functionality. But that was a great feeling, to get your first, I think it was $40 back then. That was a great feeling that you've actually built something and somebody wants to pay for it. So it's rewarding. But it's a lot of work, And I'm sure on a smaller plugin, if you can find a small niche, there's easier ways of doing it. But I think the other thing I would say is be very careful about the pricing model that you're using as well. We do, we personally, we don't do any lifetime deals. We do annual subscriptions. Lifetime deals do work for some people. I've tended to stick to annual recurring because that means I've got a steady income stream. It means I can reinvest into the product and also maintain the levels of support that I want. So I think the support has been a very big part of our success as well, making sure that we give good support and we get good reviews as a result of that.
That's really interesting and very smart, because you've identified your niche as being the agencies, the people in the business, in the industry. So word of mouth makes perfect sense as you build a name for yourself. That can jump you ahead in some ways. Whereas if you were targeting new people that were just building their own websites, then it might be harder because they'd see the people with all the ad spend.
Yeah. And I think, for our light product is great for the person just building a blog, just wants a contact us form or something like that. That's one of the ways that we give back to the community is to offer that light edition. But then if we focus more on the agencies and the developers, they're more likely to want to invest in a product where they can get that support and get that feedback and have all the integrations and stuff that we offer. And by focusing on that market, we've managed over time to increase our average ticket price. Because we're aiming at, maybe an agency is more cash rich than an individual that's working on the website. So that's been better for us financially to focus on that particular area.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you sell to one agency, that's probably multiple site licenses. So by having that one contact, you're getting your products used on multiple sites.
Yeah. And we have a lot of individual developers as well that use the product, and those are probably the best product advocates you can get. The individual developer who's just they've got a passion for WordPress. They want to talk about it. They want to shout about products that they use, and that can be a great way of getting the word out there about your product.
We do okay with Google AdWords and Facebook ads as well. We probably spend a few thousand on each a month, but we do track profit on both of them. The ROI is there. But I think that's because we're not generally in a crowded market.
Right.
So, and whenever we do any kind of ad that's generic, like best WooCommerce add-ons or whatever, then we make a loss. If we do something really specific, then that's when the ad is profitable. So I suppose in theory, a competitive product could find niches within that people are searching for. But I agree that you're never going to be able to compete on the general keywords like WordPress forms plugin. I dread to think what that would cost on Google AdWords.
It's very expensive. And the problem is it becomes a bidding game. So Google AdWords is not strictly done on price, obviously. It's done on quality scores and things like that. So you can technically pay less to be number one than the person at number two if they've got the quality score and the history there. So when you come into it new, you're paying typically higher to get above them. They'll then put a little bit more budget in and go above you, and it just becomes this bidding war, which Google shareholders love.
Definitely,
When I had my wedding business, I had probably 2 or 3 keywords that were profitable, and that was it. Anything that was too general, like you were saying, just didn't work. But if there was a very specific keyword, then I could make it convert. And I think that's important with Google AdWords. I see a lot of people putting money into Google AdWords and using their brand name, which I never understand.
No, I don't do that.
Even big names do that, and it's like, you're coming up number one anyway. No one else is competing for that keyword. Why are you paying for that click on the at the top there? So, but I mean, that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. I recently discovered an affiliate doing that with our brand name. So
Oh, really?
that was quickly stopped.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had that too. My brand name was actually being used in ad content, which is a big no-no in
Yeah.
Google AdWords. So yeah, we knocked that on the head as well.
Yeah. So we're moving on to the story time part of the episode, where we each tell a story about our experience in this particular area. Do you want me to go first to give you a chance to think of something
Sure. Yeah,
you
let's
haven't
do
already said?
that.
Okay. So we touched on this earlier about how at Barn2 we started with very niche products. So
Mhm,
for my story time, I'll tell more about that as a story, that
mhm,
when we were new, we weren't well known as a plugin company, even though we were a WordPress agency,
mhm,
and didn't have the confidence, the marketing skills, or indeed the domain authority to
mhm,
really compete. We did very specific products, but
mhm.
we are moving into more crowded marketplaces as we're growing in all of those ways.
Yep.
So, for example, our most recent product that we released was a WooCommerce product options plugin,
Mhm,
which has a big competitor product add-ons on the official woocommerce.com extensions site, and also several relatively successful competitors as well
okay.
independently. So that was like the most competitive plugin that we've ever released, and
Mhm,
we only did that when we felt confident enough in our SEO and marketing strategy and
mhm.
all of that to do so. So for me, we've only very gradually moved towards crowded marketplaces,
Yep.
which is still significantly less crowded than forms, for example.
Mhm.
But as we grow, it feels something that we can take on for the first time. The new plugin's doing well. I've no idea how well it's doing compared to the official one or something in terms of market share, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, I'm feeling as we grow, we can be more confident, which is a nice
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and you've also got your existing customer base that you can talk to
Mm,
about that, which I think is also that's what a lot of the bigger form plugins companies do. I mean, they build an initial plugin, then they'll build another one and piggyback off their existing customer base to do that, which I think is, I mean, such a great advantage to have.
mm. Yeah, and our first few plugins were really disconnected from each other. There was no
Mm,
real reason why
okay,
anybody would use them together, but we've
interesting.
improved that. And for
Yeah.
example, our product add-ons plugin, you could use it within a product table created with our
Yeah.
product table plugin. You
Okay.
can use it
Yeah.
within a quick view lightbox created using our quick view plugin.
Yeah.
So we can really cross-sell those plugins.
That's great.
We don't like to spam our customers with promotional emails,
Right.
but in those cases, it felt relevant to say we have a new product add-ons plugin which works in the product table, nothing else
Yeah.
does,
Yeah.
and give them a discount as well. So
Makes
it
perfect
feels like you
sense.
can cross promote where there's a genuine link between the products.
Yeah, sure. Well, I can tell you a little bit of story about how we drifted into the WooCommerce space because one of the ways that we expand our customer base is to integrate in with other platforms, and that opens up a whole new audience for us. So, for example, we are very heavily integrated in with custom fill plugins like ACF, Toolset, Metabox, Jet Engine, and Pods. And each of those has their own communities that we can talk to our product about. But WooCommerce was an interesting one. So we wanted to be able to use our forms on products to enable you to customize products. So anything from a simple donate price field on a product all the way through to multi-step forms or the ability to do customized t-shirts and things like that. And we have all this on our website. But so we went down a whole route, which you are very familiar with, of putting stuff like in the WooCommerce store and going through that whole process. And that has actually been a nice marketing channel for us. It's
You're on
almost,
the extensions marketplace.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So we have one extension in there, and they enable you to choose certain categories that you want to be in. So if you type in, say, product customization, or I forget what the exact category is, then we will pop up there. But we kind of use it like a marketing channel. So if somebody buys that extension, they need WS Form in order for it to be able to use. That's very clear on the product page. And currently, WooCommerce are only taking, I think it's 30% of every sale. We get 70%. It used to be 60-40, which wasn't as attractive. But it's been a good way to expand our offering. So taking the plugin and then just looking at other ways that you can integrate that product in with other products that are out there. And we have about 72 different integrations now. And each of those is just another channel that we can talk to. And it's funny because some of the integrations that we work with, I mean, even when we did Jet Engine, for example, they jumped on it. They were like, they've even got their own form plugin. But the fact that we integrated in with them, their team were keen to blog about it and write about it. And that was a great way of getting our name out there a little bit more by having that integration. So that's certainly another way that we have managed to get some exposure out there in this crowded space, is to develop relationships with other companies and then do things with those companies. So another example is like Groundhog. It's a CRM platform for WordPress, and we've done some podcasts with them, and we've done some shows with them as well. And everything helps. Just get the word out there in as many different ways as you can.
Yeah. And that all fits very well together, doesn't it? Like the partnership work in terms of them using your product, but also promoting it to their customers because of the integration. I know that we're always really flattered when somebody chooses to integrate with one of our plugins, and we're always very happy to use that to promote their plugin. So we have like compatibility pages in our knowledge base. We might blog about it. If it's a big integration, support will recommend it. So speaking from the other side, when people do that, then there is a reason to promote somebody's product then.
Yeah, and we try to do very deep integrations with these companies as well to differentiate us, and that is then attractive to those integrators that we're working with. So we tend to do, for example, when we did the ACF integration, Elliot Condon still owned it back then, and I had a Zoom call with him, and he was like, "Wow, this is impressive," because we did full bi-directional integration with all the core fields. And he then tweeted about it, and that then got more interest in it that way. So
excellent.
So I think if you can go that extra leg, what I've found is, a lot of the integrations that are provided by third parties they're very basic. So like an email integration may just push the name and the email address across. So we've tried to go a little bit further than that. You can actually just click a button and it will build a form for you that's fully integrated. So by doing that, it gives any kind of PR that's done around it a bit of an angle and a differentiator. And I think people are then interested in writing about that and talking about it.
When you do an integration, is it a factor in your decision-making process whether anybody else has already done it, or do you tend to look for ones that haven't been done in the other form plugins? Oh, you've gone all robotic again. And we just have Matt arriving at the same time. So if you can sort your connection, I'll just bring Matt on. Hi, Matt.
Hey, we made it.
So back in Germany then.
Oh, I never left Germany. I was at CloudFest, which was in southern Germany. So
was it? I thought it was in the States for some reason. Okay.
Yeah, there is one in the States. I learned as well, but this one is the German one.
So. Well, that's very handy then. Yeah.
Yeah, except for when the train is late, and not so handy. Okay. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Yeah, my internet connection keeps going in and out, so I apologize for all the viewers about that. But such is life,
They just think you're pixelated in real life.
Yeah, yeah. Some people think I am ChatGPT, but no.
Yeah, the face of ChatGPT.
That's right. Where do we get to? I can't remember now.
So we'd each done story time. So shall we move on to Matt? Do you want to do story time?
In terms of saturated market, that's a good one. Oh, yeah, I think honestly, I was thinking about it a little bit. Give really had a huge advantage when we launched. There was a giant hole in the market when we launched. It's the opposite of a crowded market. that was definitely a huge opportunity. So when you can avoid a huge crowded market and you do notice a giant gap, then it's a big advantage for sure. There were a couple like donation related plugins, but they all had serious limitations and they weren't very well supported at the time. Shortly after we launched, the other big plugin in donations called Charitable launched about 6 months after we did. And they actually cited that they felt like they got slower adoption because they were second to market. But it's been about 8 years. They have about 10,000 active installs and we have 100,000. I think that there's still lots of space in this market. You know, I don't want to encourage everybody to go building donation plugins, but I think there's still lots of space, personally. But since then, the market has gotten crowded, but really not by WordPress plugins, but by SaaS competitors. They were few and far between when we launched, at least in terms of ones that were really customer friendly and oriented towards a lower budget nonprofit organizations. And now they're a dime a dozen, and they all want to break into the WordPress space as much as they can. I think the consequence of that for us that we've noticed is that like paid advertising has gotten a lot more expensive than it used to be. For example, they're all bidding on our keywords now, even though they're not particularly high volume keywords even. So it was cheaper for us before, and it's a little more expensive now. So, whenever we find like nice outlets that are like nonprofit publications or communities, we always find it's kind of like a race for who's going to be the first to get in the email newsletter or things like that. So we see that happen a lot. And now that it is more crowded, as they say, it definitely makes us have to be smarter and have to work harder. But I think that's okay, personally. I don't mind it. Competition breeds ingenuity. And I think that's actually a strength of that we've developed, is the ability to recognize what's happening in the marketplace and adapt.
Yeah, we've certainly been first at a lot of things in the past few years, and that has given us an edge over competition, particularly for, you know, and I think, you know, we were talking about this earlier, was we're not really in the game to compete and pull customers from other form plugins. We're really interested in getting people when they're looking for a form plugin for a project. So I think having an edge on some of the functionality that we've had over some other form plugins, and we've seen other form plugins copy us as a result, which, you know, is kind of rewarding in a way. It's kind of nice to see that you're innovating and doing things before other people. And because we're a small business, we can get things done a lot quicker, which gives us an advantage as well.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. I think the other thing that I'm noticing right now, I'm trying to pay close attention to, we've talked about it on the show a little bit, is the AI space. Just like about 6 months ago, I was doing an episode of Glam That Plugin. And I called out and said, oh no, actually it wasn't for that. It was for when I was writing up my thing about the freemium market and how you can, and how search works on .org. And I was highlighting that there's lots of keywords where there's not a lot of results for those keywords, and they are like highly targeted features that people are looking for. And at that time, one of them was artificial intelligence. Like I searched artificial intelligence and almost nothing came up. And that was really just 6 months ago. And now I would say there's dozens already. So everyone wants to be first to market, but they're all trying to do different things in different ways. And it's like everyone's trying to fill that vacuum immediately. So
our OpenAI integration has been incredibly popular. And we're giving it away for free right now because the technology is changing constantly. We've just added GPT-4 to it, and some of the other models that they've just pulled out. But really, really interesting use cases with it. So, you know, that's another area where we've we happened to have the form plugin, and we thought, let's introduce OpenAI to it for a number of different reasons. So we use the moderation component to it for preventing spam. We have the ability for people to use it to almost build like a customer service portal, so you can type in a question and get a response back from it as if you're talking to a customer service rep. It's kind of scary when you use it. And then we also use the image feature as well, so you can use that to build images for blog posts and or maybe a user avatar or something like that. So yeah, I think in a crowded space, you can differentiate yourself by being first to market with some of these ideas. And other people want to talk about it. When I did the OpenAI stuff, I was inundated with requests from people that wanted to do an interview about that product and what it did, because OpenAI was just such a buzzword.
So we've talked quite a lot about Mark's marketing strategy of building a name within the community and with agencies and so on, so that becomes their go-to solution for forms. Matt, you oversee multiple brands, and do you have any other kind of marketing tips? For example, you oversee Cadence, which is obviously a theme, and that's a very saturated market. Do you have any other tips on marketing in that side of things?
In terms of like marketing when it's a crowded market?
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of touched on this, I think, last week or so. I actually don't believe that anything in WordPress right now is a crowded market. Mark might disagree with me, but like in terms of how do we define a crowded market, or how do we understand whether or not the market is crowded or not? Like, personally, I think that the amount of opportunity out there in terms of millions of websites compared to number of users, even of forms, like number of users of forms today compared to the number of the sheer number of WordPress websites out there, I'm like, there's probably not enough form solutions out there, truthfully, for all of the demand and all of the need. Like, for example, I'm sure Jotform is used a ton on WordPress still. So just as one, or typed forms, things like that continue to be really popular that are outside the WordPress space, but used on WordPress sites. Why? Because they serve a specific need that the other form plugins somehow, one way or another, aren't. And the consumers are wanting those types of features. So generally, like in terms of trying to market to this specific space, it's always about competitive analysis, knowing what your competitors do, like Mark was touching on already. Like, he was basically first to market with an AI integration. And that's because he's paying attention. And when there's an opening, he's trying to fill it quickly. And that's what it's all about, is understanding your market and what people want, and trying to get there and put it out there as quickly as possible. Do some content around it, and make sure that folks know that if they are looking for these types of things, we do it. Not only do we do it, but we do it really, really well. So that is like kind of standard marketing. It doesn't really matter whether your market is crowded or not. It's something that everyone should be doing more and more often. It's just that aspect of it is so much more important when you have quite a few competitors who are all trying to pay attention and all trying to jump into those features at the same time.
I think it also depends on what channels you're looking at. That there are, like, SEO is saturated. For me to get any kind of SEO ranking is impossible, because there are certain key players out there that have incredible SEO. If I look at different channels, like talking to somebody about OpenAI or whatever it may be, there's a little audience for you that you can latch onto. Another thing I would say is look internationally. There are certain plugins that have a really, really strong presence in the US, for example, that aren't so strong in some other countries. And that can be another way where you can stand out. And I found I have a lot of European customers. And in fact, when I wake up in the morning, most of my support tickets come in the morning because they're coming from overseas. And then my afternoons are pretty quiet. So yeah, there are opportunities internationally. I mean, just going to WordCamp Asia a few weeks ago, made me realize how different that market was, but also how huge it is, and also how unaware they are of, which surprised me, of even some of the bigger brands. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there to be had for sure.
Yeah. One of the most widely adopted forms in WordPress originated in Asia. So
Yes,
Contact Form 7, right?
Yes, it did. Yep. And everybody I spoke to is using it.
Yeah.
It's free, and there's a massive price differential between what the US is prepared to pay and what people in India, for example, are prepared to pay. So you can even look at doing different price brackets for different countries and things like that.
Yep.
Interesting. I've never actually looked at the different countries. I've got an analysis of where our customers are, but I haven't done it in terms of the saturation of the market and whether to adjust our marketing efforts per country or something. So that's interesting.
I hadn't even, I mean, it doesn't really occur to you. You kind of, you're in the US and you've got 365 million people out there, and it's a huge market. But the whole world is out there. There's a massive amount of people that you can plug into. One of the things that I'm working on is language translation right now, which is a real challenge. It's harder than I thought it was, primarily because most of our strings that we are translating, they're very small. And to get it translated correctly in the right context, that can certainly be a challenge. So that's something I'm working on, so that I can reach out to the more international markets and make the product easier for those people to use. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm one of the things I'm looking at right now to try and grow the audience.
That's cool.
So we normally stop at about Q2, and we end with best advice to new plugin shops. So should we each go around and give our top tip?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you want to start, Mark?
Yeah, sure. I would say if you're going to be starting a plugin, before you even start it, make sure you have found a niche, make sure there is a market for it. And I would also say treat that plugin business like any other bricks and mortar business. Don't think that you're going to put this live on the plugin store and you're suddenly going to get sales coming through. You've got to treat it like any traditional business. It's got to be marketed. You've got to talk about it. It's a lot of work. There's no easy way of suddenly producing lots of money. It doesn't work that way. It's gonna be a challenge. The last thing I would say is remember that you're eventually going to be basically building a support business. A lot of what you're going to be doing is going to be support. So once you've built that product, you may spend 50% of the time developing that and improving that product, but a vast amount of time and resource is going to go into supporting those customers. And the better you can do that, the better your reviews are going to be, the better the word of mouth traffic is going to be, and you're going to have a stronger product overall. So really put some focus on customer support and learn how to do that properly.
Music to my ears, Mark. Love it. I'll go. Personally, like I said, I would encourage everyone to not get daunted by whether or not they think the market is saturated or not. But make sure that you know exactly what your competitive advantage is, regardless. Even if it's like, if you do see a big giant hole in the market somewhere, you still have to know what your competitive advantage is there against other similar solutions. Think broader than just like, I'm going to build a new e-commerce platform that does products and taxes and shipping. Like, it's more than that. What is it about your e-commerce platform that's actually better than WooCommerce in one form or another? Which, by the way, we all need a lot more competition in the e-commerce space. We really do. Yeah. Or SEO plugin. Yoast, it really has been around a long time. All-in-one SEO. They've been doing it for a super long time. It doesn't mean there's not ingenuity to still be had there. Figure out how you're different from them. How you might be a lot more intuitive, how you might, leverage AI in a way that they don't yet, maybe. Or you might be able to do some interesting kinds of scoring that are more actionable or educational than the current Yoast scoring is. Things like that. There's always ways to have a strong competitive advantage and to come out the gate strong. So focus on that more than anything else.
Agreed. Yeah.
And my best advice to new plugin shops, I suppose, is if you don't have that niche within a crowded market, and if you can't find a strong competitive advantage, then to go with something less competitive, because WordPress is so huge. There are genuine gaps and things that don't even exist anymore. And as I said earlier, what worked for me was starting small and only becoming more competitive as we gained that authority and the confidence. So you don't have to go into a competitive space. You can find your whole blue ocean, or whatever the business methodology calls it. And they do still exist in WordPress.
Yeah, don't do what I did. Just
Or do if you're as good as Mark and know what you're doing.
Yeah, jump 2 feet first, straight into the deep end. Almost drown for a while, but still come out on top, right? More or less.
Yeah. Another thing I would say as well is don't underestimate the amount of work that's involved. You know, particularly with a more complex plugin, the amount of documentation, debugging that you have to do to get the product to a very good level is phenomenal. It's been, I think I put more time into debugging documentation and just dealing with support than I have building the product. It's been a very important part of the success.
Yeah. I'm still really challenged by what you said last week, Katie, about how your first plugins were just looking at the WooCommerce forum and being like, what does everybody want that WooCommerce isn't giving them? And you started small with really small utility plugins that people actually really wanted. And that gave you the lift that you needed in the first place. Like I've been thinking a lot about that one. That was a good one. So,
yeah.
Why are you challenged by it?
I think maybe it's even related to the way in which, like, I say that the space isn't saturated, but at the same time, I do think it's harder to actually get your early success nowadays than it was previously. And I think it's largely because folks don't want to be nickel and dimed about every single feature that's in their WordPress space. And so it's like, if you're going to launch something, I think it should have a lot of value to the customer. It should be bringing them value and not just be a fun utility that they need or want. So that's a little bit of where you're challenging me is like, it's still like, there's still a lot of need and usefulness there for smaller, well done plugins that maybe aren't high priced, but at least can pay the bills a little bit. So it's a good one. I like the perspective.
Okay. Well, I think that's everything we need to say on that topic, which has been really interesting because it's a topic that I haven't known much about. So I've learned a lot, which is great. Next week, we're talking to Chris Badgett from Lifter LMS about free trials, because pretty much all WordPress product companies have considered whether or not to offer free trials. Some have tried it, others haven't. But I've always found that this is a really hard area to get good data on as to do free trials work in WordPress. So we're going to be talking to Chris Badgett about his take on that, and also Matt and I sharing our own experience of free trials or not.
Great. Chris is a wealth of knowledge, so that will be a good one to tune into.
Awesome.
Right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and see you next week. And thanks very much to Mark for coming as well and being our special guest.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was good fun.
Okay, bye.